Hey guys, in this video I want to try to help you answer the question which of these two cameras to buy, the X-Pro 3 or the X100V. I think it is very natural for folks looking for a good street, reportage, family, travel, event camera to look at both of these cameras. They are designed well for documentary style photographers who need stealth, portability, speed, durability, and beyond that, just who appreciate a really well-designed tool. There are plenty of differences between these cameras though that a lot of them are extremely obvious, and I don't want to waste your time or question your intelligence by delving deep into those. Instead, I'll put on the screen what I consider to be the most important specs differences for you to peruse, and after that we'll dive deeper into what may not be so obvious but is not unimportant. They are important. They're important differences, and we're going to talk about them. But first, let's talk about the obvious stuff. So before we dive into the juicy fun to talk about differences between these cameras, I do want to tell you about something exciting we're announcing. If one of these will be your first cameras that you've ever owned, or you're leveling up your photography game with these, I do want to suggest that our live online workshop that Danae and I will be starting soon. We'll be teaching you both how to use your Fuji device, but also the art of photography in an engaging, live, interactive online setting. Also, these courses will be heavily discounted initially as we will be having it in beta right now. So if that sounds interesting, please hop down into the description and click a link to sign up for notifications and more information. Space is limited, and I'm quite sure at the beta price especially that will be booked out very soon. Of course, before you look into that though, you've got to have your camera, and that brings us back to deciding between these. The most obvious difference, of course, is that the X-Pro 3 has interchangeable lenses, the X100V doesn't. But the X100V does have flexibility here in the form of two adapters, the WCL and TCL adapters. And I've done extensive testing with these adapters on these other lenses and equivalent lenses tested with this one, and to see how they compare. But the results of the testing will be in a second video. I thought it warranted two videos because that's a really big question. It's pretty complex. So I thought it warranted that other video, but the answer greatly depends on which focal length you want to shoot with, and it also relates more than just image quality, as it affects accuracy and speed of focus too. So sorry, but there's not a nice clean way to answer that question. Again, watch that other video to dive deeper. But I will say this, if image quality is your top priority, the X100V will absolutely not disappoint you. It's the best 23mm f2 lens that Fuji makes, and I'd go so far as to say that the WCL lens adapter, which gives you a slightly wider than a wider 19mm focal length, is also excellent and much better than the X-Pro 3 with the near equivalent 18mm f2 lens, which is probably Fuji's weakest prime lens in my opinion. A TCL adapter though, I wouldn't use it, but again, check that other video for the details. Now, both of these cameras are weather resistant, though the X100V comes with a caveat. Fuji says that you do have to buy the external filter, adapter and filter, for it to be truly sealed and ready for the elements. And it also comes with another cost. The X100V gets pretty warm. It doesn't have the same heat dispersal that previous X100 versions had. But if you're doing photography, it's fairly normal and expected for the V. It's nothing to be overly concerned about, but it will get warm. I have another video where I really tested this quite a bit, and after going through all that, I feel pretty good about saying that it's not something to be concerned about for photography. And it's the price you pay for the weather resistance. It's going to be hotter because the heat can't escape as well. But the X-Pro 3, on the other hand, won't experience these heat issues with photography. For video though, both of these cameras have a 15-minute recording limit for 1080p and 10 minutes of recording time for 4K, and that again is due to heat dispersal. They get too hot when shooting video. And honestly, if you want to shoot hybrid, I wouldn't recommend either of these anyway. I would recommend you look at the X-T3 or X-T4 if you need a good hybrid workhorse. As far as design, of course, both of these cameras look incredible, at least in my opinion. I'm in love with their curves and lines, and when it comes to the practical aspects of holding these cameras, of course, the X100V is nice because it's so much smaller and lighter, but on the other hand, the X-Pro 3 feels a lot better in the hands, with a better designed grip, in my opinion, both on the front and the back. It's just got a better feel to it, and I love the way the back has this large ridge for the thumb. It just feels better. X100F just doesn't have as much to hold on to. And it's also harder to one hand if you don't have, say, that hot shoe thumb grip that can attach to the hot shoe. The X-Pro 3 has more grip ability, although I will say when you attach large, I don't have one here, it's back there. If you attach one of the larger Fuji lenses to it though, it does get a little unbalanced, and I'd say it's not quite grippy enough. If I shot a lot of sports with super telephoto lenses, I would probably invest in a bigger grip to also go with it. But that's just me. If you shoot with the primes though, it's great. It really is designed to have those smaller Fuji prime lenses on it. The design of the LCD screen is also substantially different. The X100V has that more standard articulating screen that folds out. It's flexible and it works really well in most situations, but the X-Pro 3 on the other hand limits the use of the LCD by hiding it. This design is extremely polarizing, of course, for people like me who only want to shoot with the LCD on when they shoot at waist level, and who prefer a well-designed EVF shooting experience. At all other times, most of the time. We really love this design and prefer it over the always visible, scratchable, distractible, chimpable LCD screen of the other Fuji X cameras. Besides that, we get a little cool sub-monitor on the X-Pro 3 right here that can give you basic information. Like you see here, it's showing me my battery life even when it's off, which I love that. I love that I can glance at this and see what the battery life is like. Other important quick glance items when it's on that I just like seeing on the back. And all of that is great except when you're in the dark or even semi-dark, because you can't see it because it's not backlit. But for others like Danae, this is severely limiting. If you change your Q menu items a lot, if you like to use touch gestures to change settings, or if you like to look at your photos after you've taken them, then this is not going to work well for you and you're going to get frustrated very quickly. This could be in portrait shoots, for example, or studio shoots where you want to look at the back of the screen to see those shots, maybe with a client, and see what you got. But flipping the screen down over and over will get old very quickly, and that's a strong argument in favor of the X100V for you folks. Now, one advantage or disadvantage of the X-Pro 3 versus the X100V, depending on how you shoot, is the design of the EVF selector dial. You'll notice it has a lot more substance to it on the X-Pro 3. The lines follow or flow gracefully down to this grip, and that design is nice, and it protrudes out, allowing you to flip this really easily. The X100V though, it does not protrude the same way. It's on the edge, but it doesn't protrude, and it's much smaller, and also, I believe, not as tall. Yep, not as tall. So it's less substantial, less easy to get at and move around. And that can be hard if you're shooting one hand. It's really awkward to get to with one hand. You just forget about it, it's not gonna work. And the thumb grip won't help you either. But with the X-Pro 3, I can one hand and adjust that, no problem. You can ride that shutter by shooting an Aperture Priority with smart ISO settings enabled, and it's a lovely experience. It's so nice to be able to have that large wheel accessible, and it's probably the best shooting experience I've had on any device for Aperture Priority shooting. But it's a double-edged sword because it's also easy to inadvertently bump, especially when you're moving it in and out of camera bags. If you never shoot in semi-auto exposure modes, you may prefer the V, where it's less of a chance of having that dial move on you. But the X100V also has another advantage over the X-Pro 3. It has a tiny, elegant leaf shutter built into the lens, which allows for a couple interesting things. And the first is that it's near silent. It's not silent now because I have the shutter sound on, of course, so let me just turn that off really fast. And now you can hear that shutter. This is great for event photographers or street photographers who want to be in stealth mode. To be clear, the X-Pro 3 can be put into electronic shutter mode, which is completely silent, but electronic shutter brings with it some of its own problems, including rolling shutter issues where images can get distorted if you're photographing moving subjects, and also banding if you're in artificial lighting. If silence is your goal, the X100V is going to give you a better image quality with its leaf shutter for sure. The second thing that's nice about the leaf shutter is that it allows the V to have built-in neutral density filter. This is awesome to control the amount of light hitting your sensor. You can shoot wide open in bright sun without running out of shutter speed with that on. Where I live, it's sunny most of the time, and when I'm out and about with the kids on adventures, we're in and out of the shadows a lot. It's nice to be able to just map that ND filter to a button and enable or disable it when hitting in and out of the sun. The third advantage with the leaf shutter is for flash photography. You can still have a shallow depth of field and light your subject in a studio without having to decrease the size of your aperture and thus increasing the depth of field. So if you've ever done flash photography in a studio and you want shallow depth of field, you'll know that this is difficult without some sort of filter. And so that's how it's helpful. When it comes to price, the cost difference here is not insignificant between these cameras. Obviously, your wallet will be happier if you can make the X100V work for you. But if you do get the V and you want to use it for travel, documentary, family photography, street photography, I can tell you that there will only be a few times you might either regret or feel limited by it. The first is when you want extreme focal lengths. If you have the X100V and you want to photograph your kids' soccer events, forget about it for anything other than team photos afterwards. You will not be able to get close to the action, even with the TCL adapter, which doesn't magically give you the super telephoto range. Similarly, on the wide end, if you decide to do landscape photography and get serious about it, there will be times where super wide will be ideal. It's happened to me even when I've had a 16mm lens with me and it hasn't been enough. And you can't always stitch together panoramic or a stitched photo to make it wider easily, especially if you're doing long exposure. It's important to be able to have a wide 10 to 14mm lens range with you if you're serious about landscape. And the widest you can get on this is with that WCL 19mm adapter, and that's not quite wide enough many times. I guarantee you will feel that limitation if you use this for landscape. But I mean, let's be honest, neither of these cameras is really built or designed for landscape. The V, when it has a tripod mount attached, will inhibit opening the battery compartment. So you want to get an L bracket. These are a good idea anyway because they allow you to mount the camera more easily in a vertical orientation. But perhaps more importantly, they allow you to access that battery compartment without removing the plate. And that is important because these batteries don't last very long, especially if it's cold and you're in a landscape situation. Seems like you always have to change them right at the wrong moment and have to take the tripod off to do that. It's a huge pain. With the X-Pro 3, you can still access that battery compartment with the tripod mount attached, but it has its own issues when it comes to landscape, and that is due to the LCD screen, which is very limiting when you've got a bracket attached. You can only get it down to there. And that's fine for a lot of the time. You don't need to go lower than that, but there will be times where you have the tripod fully extended and above your head. And at those times, it's really difficult because you can't see your settings or your composition. As for me personally, I have loved both of these cameras and I'm having a hard time deciding which one I really want to shoot with. It's hard to justify owning both as they are both designed to excel in similar shooting scenarios. It's needless overlap. But because I shoot events, the decision is sort of made for me. The X100V doesn't give me the range or reach that sometimes you just have to have. So for those instances, I have to have something like the X-Pro 3. But on the other hand, it can work great to own the X100V as a second camera. In my last event that I shot last week, I had the X-Pro 3 with the 50 to 140 to 8 lens attached to it for long shots, and then the X100V in a pouch at my side for wide shots. I also had a WCL in my pocket ready to slap on it at any point, and I did in fact use all three shooting modes or methods, and it worked really well, and boy was it enjoyable to use both of these cameras. So if you're a wedding or event photographer, that is for sure something to consider. Get the X-Pro 3 as your primary workhorse camera for event photography. It's a little bit more money, it's a little more durable. It's going to probably last longer, I would guess. But either way, it's more flexible and it's just the camera you probably need use this as your B camera for your wider shots, have both with you. That can work really well. Then you don't have to decide. You can get the best of both worlds. But if you've watched all that and you're still having a hard time deciding, well, you know what? Life is good, because I know you'll have a great time shooting with either of these cameras. And it's a very good dilemma to have. Count your blessings. But that's all I've got for you as far as comparison and contrast go. I hope you found it helpful. Remember to check out our online live interactive photo workshops if you're interested in upping your Fuji photography game. And until then, remember to do good with your camera, and we'll talk to you again real soon.